Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're doing a top 10. Topic of the top 10? Top 10 championship belt design. Now this is strictly going to be on the aesthetics, the design of the belt, not the importance, not the significance, not who's become champions, just the belt and its look itself. This is my opinion on them, and from purely aesthetic standing, my 10 favorite championship belts. Let's start it off with number 10, the Chakara Grand Championship. I know there's been some problematic issues with some of the people that ran Chakara. I always found the promotion to be interesting, a different style of wrestling than what we're used to, a more comedic style, a more cartoon-based style. I thought this belt was awesome. You have wrestlers like Icarus and Eddie Kingston and Kimberly wearing it. I just enjoyed the design. I enjoyed the Chakara logo in the middle, the whole feel of it. I thought it was a really cool championship. I really enjoyed it. I thought it excellently exemplified what Chakara was and what Chakara meant. Thought it was a really cool belt. We're going from that, our number 9, the original WWF Light Heavyweight Championship, and I don't know if it's actually the original, but it's the one that I'm most familiar with from the 1980s. It's the one that you would see on like Tiger Mask or Dynamite Kid at the time. And this was just a really neat design to a belt. It was different. It was more of a throwback to the decade before. I felt like this kind of looked a lot like the Bruno Sammartino and Pedro Morales belt than it did anything else that WWE had at the time. I thought it was a really cool looking belt. I liked the design that they put on it. Really interesting. They kind of brought back a similar version of it in the Attitude Era, which was still very much in the same vein. I thought it was really cool. I actually enjoyed it a lot. I'll go from that, our number 8, the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. Specifically the version from about 98 to the end of the company. This is another belt that I feel encapsulated the company. You had the ECW logo, you had the championship written in blood, the barbed wire. The overall design of it I really enjoyed. I think it's one of the nicest belts that's ever been made. It's definitely better than the original ECW championship, which just had a picture of the United States, but specifically Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, I believe, because originally that was the only states they ran in. Just a really cool looking belt. In my opinion, you know, one of the most prestigious championships, but as far as the design, it's really cool. There's a lot more that I think are better. Going from that, our number 7, the NXT North American Championship. This was another title that kind of harkened back to the 70s and 80s, and if you see, I have a lot of good feelings about titles that look like that are kind of similar to that style without necessarily being that style. I liked that it was an updated version of it. I liked the different color on the strap. I think it was really cool, a really different design from what we've seen from WWE for most of the last decade and a half. I've thought that the WWE championships were gaudy looking and looked more like a toy, whereas this looked to me like a world championship. I thought this was a really cool belt, hence why it's on my list. I'll go from that, our number 6, the AEW World Championship. This belt reminds me of another championship that's a little bit later on our list, and again, it's kind of an amalgamation of that and what we've seen in different companies. I really like the aesthetic of this championship. I think it looks good. I think it looks proper. I think it's big. It has the right amount of flash without being overly gaudy. It's something that I think is kind of immediately recognizable. I think they absolutely knocked it out of the park with this championship, hence why it's on my list. I'll go on from that, our number 5, the MidSouth North America Championship. You heard me mention a belt that the AEW championship reminds me of. This is that belt. This is one of those championships that a lot of people are on the fence on. Either you really love it or you really hate it. I'm in the group that really loves it. I think it's really cool. I like the way the plates are set up. I like the way the belt looks. It's different. It's individual. It makes you immediately think of one thing, and that's the North American Championship. I think this is a really cool looking belt. One of my favorites of all time. Hence why it's up on my list. Now going from that, our number 4, the WWF Intercontinental Championship from the mid-80s to mid-90s, or late 90s even, and then brought back in a similar version by Cody Rhodes later on. I really enjoyed this belt. I especially liked when different wrestlers would have a different color scheme, whether it be the white leather or Warrior who had the yellow leather, and I think he even had green leather at one point. This was just an iconic belt, in my opinion. One of the best designs I've ever seen. It's hard to think of the WWF in the new generation or the rock and wrestling era without thinking of this championship and without thinking of the great matches like Steamboat and Savage, Bret Hart and Piper, Michaels and Razor. I mean, there's so many great matches for this championship, and I know I said I wasn't adding the matches in, I'm just giving that as context. Just a really cool looking title in my opinion. I really liked the fact that it was silver where the main belt was gold. It kind of gave you a delineation of gold is for the main champion, silver for the secondary title. I thought it was a really cool belt. Now going from that on number 3, the NWA Championship, specifically the one that people call the Dome Championship or the Globe Championship, the one like Harley Race wore, the one that Nick Aldis wore, the one that Dana B. Severin wore, Ric Flair wore, the one that famously Shane Douglas threw down. I really like this style. And this was one that harkens back to the 70s. Again, you've heard me mention I like these kind of throwback titles. There's something so simplistic and so elegant about it that makes you think world champion right away when you see it. Whether it's from years of seeing guys like Terry Funk or Dusty Rhodes or Ric Flair hold it up, or even the newer generation like Tim Storm and Nick Aldis holding it up. It just feels so iconic. It's such a great design. I love the little dome piece that has the NWA in it. It's just a really cool belt. I really enjoy it, hence why it's on my list. Now going from that on number 2, the WWF Winged Eagle World Championship. This is the one that went from basically Hulk Hogan all the way into the Attitude Era and then got redesigned with the circular eagle belt. I mean, this is on the top of most people's lists of best championships that's ever been designed, and for good reason. The little flourishes on the side of the main plate, the eagle protruding out of the championship. Again, it's another one, much like I said with the Intercontinental, where they changed out the leather on it at times and made it different. The design of this championship is just so iconic and it ties so much to so many great memories, and I just love the look of it. More so than the original belt that Hogan won from the Iron Sheik, which I thought was cool, the green strap belt. And then Hogan had a couple other belts before turning to this, and I definitely like this better than anything that they've had after it, for sure. Just a great looking belt. One that, again, tops most people's lists of best looking championships. I mean, it's right up near the top for me. Didn't quite make it to number 1, though. Now, before we do get to our number 1, if you think I put a championship too high, put one too low, left one off the list altogether, let me know here in the comments. And before we get to our number 1, there's a little thing I do here on my top 10s called the best of the rest. Basically, belts that were considered for the list but didn't quite make it. First up, the original Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Championship. There's something so beautiful and so simple about the red ROH letters on the silver background of the belt that just makes it so iconic to me. I think a lot of times when championships are being made, they try to put too much into it, and this is just the perfect example of keeping it simple, making something that's beautiful. You show the ROH logo, but it's not big and gaudy like the WWF logo or WWE logo is currently on the championships. You instantly know it's a Ring of Honor championship. It looks great. I think it's an amazing belt, hence why it was considered for the list. Last but not least, the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. This is another belt that I considered for the top 10, and it's one that I really like. And then it kind of dawned on me, was my appreciation for this belt more for the people that carried it, like Naito, Nakamura, MVP, or was it for the look? And it was a little bit of both. I really do enjoy this. I do think this is the best championship that New Japan has put out. I do think their strong championships are really nice looking as well. I do like the look of the new IWGP World Championship. It's kind of reminiscent of the Winged Eagle belt with its own style to it. But this is my favorite of all the New Japan belts over the years. I think it's really cool. hence why I considered it for the list, but it didn't quite make it. Now before I get to my number 1, let's smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't, and if you see where it says join, that's how you become a channel member. It definitely helps out if you'd like to do that. With all that being said, my number 1 championship, the big gold belt. Now this was used as an NWA World Championship, a WCW World Championship, a WWE World Championship, all at different times. To me, this is the most beautiful championship I think they've ever put out in any company anywhere. I know it's something that Ric Flair himself got made because he felt like he needed something better than what they had with the NWA Championship, which I also thought was a really great design. But this is a championship. When you ask me to think of what a world championship should look like, it should look like this. It's gold. It has your name on it. It tells you who you are. It tells you what it is. It's flamboyant. It's over the top in the best way, like a sequence robe would be. And it just looks great. It makes everybody that wears it look better. I mean, everybody from Flair to Triple H to Booker T to Steamboat, all of them looked great wearing this championship. It's such an iconic belt and such a great championship in my opinion. I just think it screams class, it screams believability, it screams champion to me when I see it. To me, the big gold belt is the greatest championship of all time as far as aesthetics wise, and probably as far as importance wise as well. I really enjoy this championship. I think it's awesome, hence why it's my number 1. Now with that being said, if you made it all the way to the end, let me know down here that you made it to the end. Let me know what your favorite championship belt design is. Put it down here in the comments. And with that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another Heel Heat Top 10.